must unite what has been set asunder.
We are TFR, Truth Frequency Radio.
When you finally boil it all down, magic is imagination. We are moving into an age of manifestation. Things become actually less material, more ethereal. The golden dawn is when we awaken to this new station of life. What you think becomes real quicker. Regain our imagination, regain our inner child, and let that inner child out.
My name is Frank Castle, founding member of the music group Heistlick and New York City Neo Shaman. After a serious injury sidelined my career in 2013, I decided to set out on an adventure to search for myself with the help of the plant medicine Ayahuasca. What I discovered waiting for me was something I could have never prepared for. It was time for me to become something more, someone more. It was time I became fearless. Shine as my heart beats a rhythm with space and time. When the light starts to shine inside your third eye, you awake to the knowledge that you never die. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. It's Saturday night, Truth Frequency Radio. Best Saturday night in radio, as far as I'm concerned. I want to say what's up to everyone in the chat room. Sorcerer Supreme is in the house tonight, solo, no etherical translator, but I bring someone special to the table. But first, before the show starts, I want to give a great shout out to Chris and Cherie Gio. Without you guys, this wouldn't be possible. We would not be here doing this like this, riding the truth frequency the way we do. Don't forget to sign up to truthfrequencyradio.com for all the past shows that you haven't heard, because we have an archive that's crazy. And if you want to start at the way beginning, you could check out Frank Castle's Fearless on YouTube. And I have the first, I think, 31 episodes up. This is episode 75, I believe. People wanted me to start comic book counting it out so they know where we're at. And no disclaimer tonight, guys. This is now the journey of us. This is our journey, and our journey alone as a crew, as a group of fearless people, individuals, going on the journey together. We're about to involve ourselves in something that's going to bring the future into a different perspective for you guys. And the man that's going to help me explain all this to you and explain to you the story, tell you the story of how we met and what we built together, and the dream, the passion, the goals that we set. He is my partner in crime, definitely. Sergio Garcia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Frank. Man, I got to say, I've been listening to you, bro, since before your show started on Chris and Cherie's channel and even Freaky Fridays. And you're just one of those that just constantly blows my mind. And so to be on the show, I'm honored. I'm stoked. I feel huge responsibility for bringing some awareness and expanding people's idea of what we're going to talk about tonight. I think it's extremely important, and it's life-changing. You and I personally know how life-changing it is, especially since we know so many people that we've helped improve their lives with this particular topic. So I'm stoked, man. I couldn't be more excited.
Absolutely. So, you know what's really funny? Did I see you in a video asking a question to Corey Good?
I sent you a picture of.
I saw a video, and the guy, you were in the video. Paula was screaming in the house, "That's Sergio! I know it's Sergio!" And I'm like, "Wait a second, okay." So we met about how long ago?
I want to say it's been, we first spoke about a year and a half ago. I think it was July of last year. And then I ended up coming out to visit you and Paula with my girlfriend Jasmine. And that was about a year ago, a little over a year ago now.
All right, so I want to show how fast things move, because this is how fast the progression has been. This is why we do the show, to show now, and we do the Chronicles and bring everyone out, is to actually step into the light with all this and show you what's been going on, these connections that have been going on lifetime to lifetime after lifetime, and now we hit the right notes in the song finally. Yeah, and we found each other. You're in California, yes?
Yeah, the Bay Area, California.
All right, so he's in California. I'm in New York. He hits me up. He comes to see me. When I was explaining to Sergio before we were talking, I was like, I watched, and he came for a ceremony, right? But I watched Sergio go through something. I saw it on his face. I can see it happening all around him in the energy egg around him. But as a new shaman, it was very difficult to understand. And I was explaining that I thought it was one thing, and it really wasn't. He had the look on his face the entire time that he was part of ceremonies that was so intense, like he was internally going. Right now, can you speak on the internal, like what you experienced here a little bit?
Yeah. So before I came out to meet Frank and have ceremony, I recently had I pretty much left my job, and I'd been at a company for about 5.5 years. I'd kind of raised in, the ranks. I was one of the managers. It was a really well-paying job and something that, a lot of people would be happy to have. And I was happy there. However, it's one of those things where we all know we're here to do big things. All of us. I strongly feel that we're all a part of something that is monumental in the history of humanity. There's major shifts happening. We all can feel it. We're all a part of it. So it's like we have to strive for that purpose. Like, what is the purpose of me being here? It's more than the rat race. It's more than paying bills. It's more than eat, sleep, consume, repeat kind of thing, right? And so I was in that time of my life where I was really kind of like assessing what my next path was going to be. And I felt like something was on the horizon. And I was mentioning to Frank that around the time that Jasmine and I decided to go to see Frank and Paula for ceremony, it was right around then, which was about a month before we actually took the flight and left. Right around then, I feel that the plant medicine started working on us. I mean, lots of revelations, lots of personal reflection. We all live in certain realities. We all live in a reality and a way of perceiving the world and perceiving ourselves. And sometimes we have to go through a reality shift and a reality clash and a reality breakdown. And that's what was going on. At the time, it can be painful and scary and uncertain. But looking back, I see how important that was. And Frank and Paula were a huge part of that transition. So I think that's what you're talking about.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Now, from my perspective, as you were so, like, you personified, like, that man that's reflecting inward. Like, that's a hard job. And the medicine does start working. Like, it calls to you, and the minute you you take stride into coming, right? And you're not going to let anything stop you. It's like you're in it already. Mm-hmm. It's already working with you. Yeah. All right. So I watched you going through this, but something else happened. Now, guys, I've talked about this on the show a bunch of times, and I'm just going to tell it real quick. I was watching Serge, and I was saying, hey, why isn't it working the way, because you wanted to see the beings. I know that's what you wanted, right? Yeah. And once again, it's like Batman. He's the hero that you need, not the hero you want, right? So Aya has her own way of teaching people. So I had drank with him, and I'm watching him, and I kind of came out and said, what's going on? And they were like, well, what's his name? And I said, well, it's Sergio Garcia. And they were like, yeah, what's his name? And I'm like, yeah, you just asked me that. His name's Sergio. He's from California. Remember, he's the guy that came with his beautiful girlfriend to have ceremony. What's going on here? They're like, oh, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah. What's his name? And I'm like, what's wrong with you guys? We can all see that that's Ryan. And if you don't see that that's him, and I was like, wait, what? And they were laughing at me. There's a room full of beings laughing at me. Like, you don't see it? And I'm like, well, it's not Ryan. It's raw on, like raw. And I was bugging out. And then I was looking at you while you're contemplating, and the bird, I guess the way we're remembered to each other to really set it off came out of like your back, like where you were, and just looked me in the face. And I'm like, oh man, that's Ryan. That's him right there. How do you not know him? And then I was like, oh man. And they were like, yeah, you're going to have to go inside. So I walked back into the other room and I laid on the bed. And then I got back up and came out. And I said, oh, what's going on? And Ra was standing over you. The chessboard was there. Now I realized what was happening. It was the great contemplation of your chess move, right? They were all watching you, all of them. Shiva even put his hand out and said, get back in the room. And Paula was like, why don't you leave them alone? I'm like, why don't you mind your business, Paula? Right? So I laid on the bed thinking I was like, oh, what's going to happen and what's happening? I want to be involved too and blah, blah, blah. And Ganesh came out, which, by the way, has a lot to do with wealth and success in all areas of life. And I never met him before. And he sat on my chest and he says, man who walks in all worlds, so very nice to meet you. I heard so much about you, but this is going to happen. And he sat on me for like an hour and I couldn't get off the bed. And I struggled and they knocked me unconscious. And he just sat there and laughed at me because I couldn't move. And it looked like I had an elephant on my chest. And I left you out there to go through your process. Right. So that's my story with that part of the process. But that kicks in. Now you were already had ideas, like great future ideas. And you said to me, and add anything you want to after that story. But you said to me, I said to you, if you come back by yourself, I'll work with you again. Right. Like I need you alone. I don't know why, but I do. And you were like, yo, I'll get here. I'll see you again. And you did. That was even more amazing when that happened, when you called me and I'm in New York. Right? That brings a new, fresh perspective to this. Wow, he actually was like, I'll be back. And he came back. By then, I had a fresh, more perspective on you, Sergio. You were involved in my past lives. I was able to see lives of ours where I took over where you left off because, stuff happens, and we were to find each other. And you found your way to my front door again. And when you came in here, you were coming in with not a story or a teaching, a lesson, but not like a boring school lesson, like something so fascinating. To me, it was fascinating. The most fascinating thing. This is the whole topic of tonight. It's how spirituality crosses over and how wealth and success is important to be part of, to step into the new future, to live as in the way Paula explains as bliss, and we redefined it properly to being like moment after moment, you being able to create, and have your desires fulfilled, without hurting any other creator. But you got to be able to do that. Well, you got to be able to feed yourself, clothe yourself, live, pay your rent. So when you came in, do you remember what you were telling me?
Yeah. By then I had done a lot of research and I spent a lot of time learning about pretty much what we're going to talk about today. But I came to understand a lot more about the current system of money that we've been living under for the past, this goes back over 1,000 years, living under a system of fiat money, central banking and such. And what I came to understand is how that system, that fiat system, is mainly what is responsible for enabling the powers that be to enslave us and keep us under control, because ultimately we have up until now, we have had to use their money. And unfortunately, no matter how much money you have in your bank, they can devalue that money all day, every day, and they do so by printing and printing and printing more of it. And so I started to share with you all this, understandings that I've come to find about how our dollar system is dying. It's on its last legs because literally it's down to 2%. Basically, 98% of the value of the American dollar has been lost. The purchasing power is almost completely gone. So even though we all have been living our entire lives and our grandparents and so on under the system that we think is going to go on forever, It just seems like, it just seems too far out there to think that this system would ever end, but we're at that end of its rope. And so I was helping you, or I was kind of sharing with you what I've learned and how there is a new system emerging. And we are right at the beginning of we're at the 1995 of the internet coming out, but with a lot more awareness about what stage we're in. We're at the beginning of Web 3.0. And essentially what we're going to talk about, which is the birth of cryptocurrency. But it's not just currency. See, I don't even like using the term cryptocurrency. I like calling it the crypto economy, which is what we're going to get into. So
I'd like to jump in real quick and just say, I like to call that sovereignty.
Absolutely.
That's what I like to define it as, because as spiritual beings that we talk about all this stuff that makes us fearless, standing in the eyes of the beings and it's me, it's my birthright, it's all this. We can whistle and scream from the rooftops all day long if we want about that. But if we can't provide for nothing, you ain't nothing.
Absolutely.
You ain't got nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, money is just, a form of exchange, and
it's energy.
It's energy exchange. Absolutely. And so just like you said, I fully believe, and I've come to understand on a deeper level now how this is allowing for our first option of having true sovereignty, because what we're going to go into with the crypto economy and cryptocurrencies and crypto assets is essentially we're now removing ourselves from the old fiat system that we've had no choice to live, but living under that system. We had no choice. We had
You're just born into it.
Yeah. And the technology didn't exist for us to have an alternative. I mean, nobody could just go out and create their own currency, before the birth of, say, Bitcoin and the blockchain technology, which we'll get into, and the crypto economy. But now there is. And people are starting to basically leave the fiat monetary system, the paper money, central bank dollar system. They're exiting out of it. Like me and, our household, we've left the system of the paper dollar and now live in the crypto economy. And you can live in the crypto economy. And since it's growing at such an amazing rate, and there's so much room to grow, and it's a global economy that we're now, seeing the emergence of, we all can participate. That's what's so exciting. It's not like, I personally don't like to say, great things about things that I've done or achieved unless other people have a similar or the same opportunity. And right now, we all have an opportunity to gain sovereignty and personal financial freedom by recognizing what's going on and positioning yourself along with it to grow with it.
A new chessboard is being formed, Fearless Tribe. It's one where new players arise and walk back out onto the chessboard to play the game again, except this time it's going to be us realizing who we are, understanding the sovereignty. The system works for us. We don't work for it. Like these are the things they'll say, oh, well, that's a dream of a kid or something weird or whatever. Why? Are you thinking that this country was founded on anything less?
Right.
Than taking in charge of your own life in the land of the free, the home of the brave? How about the world and of the new, full of creators, and there's enough for everyone to eat? Right. All right. So I want to talk about this in the first half. I want to add now you came to my house with this knowledge. Dude, I was blown away. Okay. So I was
blown away. I was learning about it for the previous few months. And I'm the kind of person that when I see something that's important for people to know, I just cannot help myself. I have to get vocal. Let me actually, just on that, let me take 30 seconds and give a little bit of background just so that people understand where this kind of comes from my end. I had my kind of like awakening in the sense of awakening to, what the government really is and who really runs the world and what the agenda is. About 4 years after 9/11. I remember that because I went to a protest and kind of an activist march on the 4-year anniversary of September 11th. Before then, I'd never seen the documentaries like Loose Change or David Icke's work, whatever. But after that, I got exposed to all of that. So for about a period of like almost an entire year, I dove deep into the rabbit hole. I was locked in my room, basically the cave, just downloading hundreds of hours of all kinds of this research about the David Icke material, and that just opens up a whole new perception, right, and reality about what's really going on. And I got extremely angry. I got extremely politically active. I joined a really radical kind of a activist activist group, and I was leading marches and leading walkouts out of the high schools and doing assemblies. We even brought in like a a torture survivor from Guantanamo Bay to speak at Berkeley High School, kind of thing, at an assembly that we organized. I mean, I was deep in it. And one of the things that really made me so angry was how money is used against us and used to control us. And so I bring that up because it's pertinent to this conversation, because until now, I'd never really seen how it's possible for us to kind of, overthrow or kind of cast off the shackles and the oppression. I never saw how it was really going to happen. They've got so much power. They've got so much control. They manipulate us so deeply with our perceptions and reality. How are we going to do this? But now I finally see how it's possible, because basically they've been able to fund themselves and all of their BS. They've been able to fund themselves with the fiat system that we are now exiting from. We don't have to use their dollars anymore, so they're not going to have the power to just fabricate more and more wealth out of thin air like they've been doing all this time, and fueling their oppression against us, right? So this is our sovereignty, and that's why I just wanted to share that little part.
Okay, that's awesome. And I want to just talk. I'm reading the chat room while you're talking, and people are talking about a new control system. They could just wipe it out and everything. I'm not, and Sergio is not saying that you should just turn to cryptocurrency and forget about everything else. What we're saying is you should get involved with it, right? If you decide to shift everything over and it fails, that's on you. Right? Not on us going, oh, well, they said go 100%. Nobody said anything like that. We're saying get involved, because it's the ability. All right. I'm just going to say this really quick. If you're a struggling artist, but you had an extra $100 and you threw it in, okay, and then Bitcoin's going up, and a few months later you can't pay your rent because you had no gigs, but you could cash out on some Bitcoin because you could cash out on it, and then you could pay your rent. So that $100 just paid your rent, right? So let's be smart people. We're going to talk about a few things too. And
on that note, let me just mention, I'm glad that those kind of, we should definitely be skeptical and leery of anything. It's easy, and I was right there with it. I was right there thinking, like, this has got to be from them. Anything that comes out is from them anyway, right? How can we trust anything? But what this is really about is opening the idea to really start to understand this shift, because once you start to really dig below the surface and start to understand how this works, we're going to have to come to understand some foundational things. Like, for example, one of the terms we're going to have to talk about is blockchain technology. Once you understand what blockchain technology, which we'll cover in just a minute, you'll start to understand how it's not something that is so easily controlled like everything else was. Once you understand the notion that this is decentralization, this is decentralized, there's no central point of attack, it's worldwide, and how, we don't have to use the banks anymore. See, the banking system, the central banking system, is their main way to enslave us, because it forces us to use their money. And of course, we all know, things like the stock market, I call the stock market an elaborate form of wealth extraction. Like, you're literally extracting wealth from the middle class, and it all funnels up to the top. We all know this, right? The 1% is now richer than like everybody else, the 99%. And it's only going to keep going in that direction, except for once you start to understand what, cryptocurrencies are and crypto assets and blockchain technology. So it's good to have that skepticism, but that skepticism should irk you to start to learn and do your own research. There's hundreds and hundreds of hours on YouTube that really help you understand this entire thing. So it's worth it to everybody listening to do that research.
You know how many notes you just hit in that symphony? How many questions you just answered right there?
Couple.
Right. Anything that would steer the ship into your, all right. We're not talking about getting rich and pumping dumps. We're not talking about anything like that. We're talking about getting your wealth back.
Yeah.
Right. Ways to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
And, so I'll also mention that crypto and understanding crypto is there's a lot to understand. And this is something that is going to be unraveling and unfolding over the next 10, 15, 20 plus years. Okay, but we're at the birth of it. I mean, think back to 1995. Did anybody imagine that the internet was going to evolutionize our lives the way that it has? Could anybody have foreseen how much the internet is so valuable and useful to us today? Nobody could have. Okay, well, this is an opportunity to kind of see where things are headed and position yourself smartly by educating yourself. I mean, this is the most important thing, to educate yourself today, because of the opportunity that we have to, take advantage of the timing of it. I mean, this opportunity is not going to last forever. In 10 years, we're going to look back and, Bitcoin's maybe worth $50,000 price or more, $100,000 price, and we're going to wish that we went back to today when it's $8,000 in price. But we're not just going to talk about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is just the first, but not the only, of course. And we'll go into that a little bit deeper.
Absolutely. They're asking so many questions in the room. I'm just reading down, going, wow, wow, wow. All right, check it out. We got a minute left. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to talk about, as you came the second time, you already you laid out the foundation. I'll lay out the spiritual direction DMT took us in, and then what was created. Because, Serge, I'm happy now to have met you, and you're in my life. We have officially opened, and it would have not happened, the IamWeAreFearless.com site. And we're going to talk about the artists and how we're helping people create an abundance. Doing what you want to do. Bringing in artists and allowing them to just do their art while everything else is taken care of and everybody's getting the right cuts. And guess what? We're not only in protection from deception, you're like setting up our future as a group of creators that are literally going to live every day creating what we need to do.
You're listening to the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
No hate, no hype, no fear.
Am I a weak or is this a dream? A fantasy of where I'd rather be. So come and talk with me. Come and walk with me. Is this a wake-up call from my reality? Have you seen my friends? Have you seen my girl? Wake me up from this. I'm trapped in this world.
We are back. This is Fearless. I'm Frank Castle. With me, Sergio Garcia. IamWeAreFearless.com. If you like the music you hear tonight, that's Come Alive by Frank Castle. You can get all the music under Heist Click, HeistClick, everywhere you find music. So Sergio shows up at my door and says, I'm here, man, and I'm so excited to see him. And he comes in and he gives me this talk about kind of what he was just saying to you guys, in the first half of the show. And he hands me, though, when we were talking about wealth, he was explaining wealth to me, and he hands me a silver coin. He explains to me, he keeps it in his pocket, and when he talks to people, he kind of flips it around and stuff. He's constantly putting that energy in there. So he's like, I want to give this to you. Reminds me of you. Here you go. And now, like, paying it forward to me. And I felt it at that moment when he handed me the coin. I've got the coin right here in my hand. There's a gladiator on it, and it says courage, and it's 1 ounce of silver, right? And it's got the 2 lions on the back and everything. So I'm looking at it and I'm like, wow, it's got weight. It feels good. It's nice and all. So he gives me the whole spiel about Bitcoin, and all I could think about was the coin and the wealth that he was explaining to me. And I felt like the pirate for the first time again. And I was like, oh, but everything else was making sense. But that the first time you hear it, and I've heard about Bitcoin. I have a friend named Dave. Dave was right, by the way, Four Toe Jones. He's been talking about this for years. And now he's in Guatemala chilling, smoking weed in a hammock in a beautiful place. And he's just like, yeah, Bitcoin, don't forget. Right. So I decide to have a little smoke session with Serge, and I want to go in and ask the question, like just say what's going on. Should I do this? Should I be part of this? I don't know, right? Let me just ask. So we go in, and this king came out. He was big giant head, and jewels on his crown. And he reminded me of Santa Claus, but a king. And I went, there's a king standing next to you, Sergio. And he said to me, where's your coin that Sergio gave you? And I said, it's in my pocket. Why? And he goes, can you get it? And I said, man, I'm under. Like, I'm here with you on the other side. I'm not in the room right now. And he said, go in your pocket and get the coin. So I reached down and I said, oh, there it is. And as I pulled it out of my pocket, it was shining. And I held it up. And he said, do you see that? And I'm like, why does it look like that? It almost looks like my silver chakra, like, when it was given to me, it was like shone. And I was like, wow, that's like super silver. And he's like, well, that's because it's here and there. It's wealth on both sides. Mm-hmm. We consider it in both places. I'm like, how is that possible? And then he just came over and he touched it. And he said, you're an alchemist, don't you remember? Mm-hmm. He kind of blinked off and went away. And I saw the algorithms in the corner of the room, as Sergio had been telling me about. Okay, this is what I saw. I seen gold and silver being suppressed by money being printed out of a machine, and it was just keeping it down. And every time it tried to creep up or do anything, they just printed more. And then Bitcoin was like an algorithm above all of it in this blockchain. I don't know what to call it. It was above everything that can't be touched by the printed money. And it was moving. And then they said to me, space credits. Think of space credits if you need an easy explanation. And I go, why can't the money being printed suppress that? And they were like, watch what happens. And as Bitcoin went up, they tried everything. They tried throwing money in all directions. Everything tried to happen. And then gold and silver started creeping up. And they went back to that, and then Bitcoin started going up, and then a couple of other coins were going. I was like, what's happening? They go, they can't stop the future. And then I watched the money system kind of collapse, but gold, silver, a few other precious metals went up exponentially. It was ridiculous looking, and Bitcoin just went straight up. And they were like, if you ride that wave now, it's kind of like when the stock market first, we know the stock market's what it is. We understand it now. We're like, yo, it's all draining from us. We're not really doing that well. But in the beginning, it works well for people in the very beginning. Mm-hmm. So you're buying stocks of AT&T for $2, and then, they're worth whatever. We're seeing those returns now, not over the course of a lifetime, but over the course of the tipping point.
Yeah.
Right. So that's my story now. Like, I started understanding him, and it still took me a month to pull the trigger with anything, even buying silver. But I held that coin, and I hold it all the time. And we're going to be part of the riding the wave into the future. We can all be Silver Surfer, riding the surfboard of energy. We can all do it. The pizza, there's enough pie for everyone. Everyone could have their own pie. Right? Sergio came, put this in my hand. The silver coin on the other side in my palm. I was like, wow. And the flower of life opened around it. And they were like, look, you took a petal from Serge. He offered it to you, and you're like, blink. And I'm like, oh, look, the silver coin. And then it turned into a flower of life, of wealth. And then I started inviting people over to take from that. And it was basically knowledge. They take one leaf and then grow their own. Become your own bank. Become your own shaman. Do you see the message that's coming through now? It's not just, oh, let's go. I was just going to say something very messy, but like, we're not just saying go Bitcoin. We're just teaching what's happening around us. Right? We're about sovereignty and wealth and ease in our future when they're trying to now clamp down on us in every direction. Yeah. It's a horror show, people.
Yeah.
Let's defeat the horror show.
No, absolutely. And, it's important to recognize important for people to kind of understand that when we talk about Bitcoin and these cryptos, these aren't just investment vehicles. They aren't investment assets. These are new forms of money, new forms of having exchange around the planet,
Technology.
Yeah, and exactly. And this was not an option before the technology was available, which was just recently. And so it's important so I kind of feel like, well, for one, we should say that understanding crypto is something that takes time. It's not something you're going to get in a 1-hour talk. It's not something you're going to get in an afternoon or a month. This is pretty much all that I ever, listen to or read about, other than the TFR shows, of course, throughout my day on YouTube and whatever other podcasts. And it's the most important education, other than, the etherical and the other dimensional types of education, of course, that we all love. However, this is about how to live in this realm as a more sovereign being, true power, true choice, because now you can actually be in charge of your own, or more in charge of your own wealth. And so there's a couple things to kind of lay the foundation of. The first being that, yes, we are nearing the end of the rope for our dying fiat system. I mean, it's important for people to know that fiat currencies have been around for over 1,000 years, right? China was the first to kind of experiment with them. And every single fiat currency that has ever existed has eventually gone to zero in value, every last one of them. So why would we ever think that the American dollar is the one exception to the rule? It's ridiculous. And most fiat currencies on average last about 40, 42 years. Even though ours has you could say 72, you could say 100 years. You could say it was the end of the fiat currency when the Federal Reserve came in and started taking, removing the gold backing of it, their emergence of the petro. There's a lot of history behind this, but it's important to know that every single year the dollar loses value. Every single day the dollar loses value. So even if you just have, let's say, $1,000 in a bank account, even if you're getting, say, a 1.5% interest rate per year, the inflation is over 2%, so you're still losing money by just holding on to it, right? So this is what people are waking up to, that the fiat system is dying, and if I keep any sort of wealth or any sort of money in that fiat system, which involves stocks and bonds and most of the investment vehicles that people go into, it's just a matter of time. And meanwhile, there's this emerging of a new form of assets, right, in these blockchain and digital assets. So let's start kind of defining some of these. And what I was going to mention before is that we might end up having a few shows about this because there's so much to cover. So a couple of things that are important to understand is the idea and the concept of the blockchain, right? So what is the blockchain? The blockchain is essentially the idea of having a distributed ledger. So let's go back to, you guys all remember when Napster first came out, right? One of the analogies I like to share about understanding blockchain is when Napster first came out. So what was life like before Napster and like LimeWire, right? So Frank, you had CDs, I had CDs. If we want to share CDs, I have to mail them to you, right? But then Napster came out, and now there's a peer-to-peer network that we can connect to, and we can upload files, music files, and then in a minute now you've got them to download, right? And so the blockchain is a similar idea in the sense of it's a peer-to-peer network, but not just for sharing files, it's for having a database of any kind of transaction involving value. So it could be money, it could be goods, property, even votes can exist on this distributed ledger. So what's a ledger? A ledger is record keeping, right? If you own, like, say, a medical practice, you're a doctor, you've got a ledger. It's a ledger. It's the transactions of all the transactions you've had with your patients, right? That's a ledger, but most ledgers are private. Well, the idea of the blockchain is that it's a decentralized and distributed ledger that anybody can access and look at anywhere in the world. So one of the reasons why Bitcoin was such a big evolution for humanity is because it's decentralized. That means that there's no Bitcoin company, there's no Bitcoin CEO, there's no Bitcoin main servers, there's no central point of attack for, say, the government or any government or the Federal Reserve to go after. So the blockchain is the databases, is the distributed database that exists on any of the computers around the world that are part of that blockchain, and that contribute to that blockchain keeping going. So what that means is that when I send you, let's say I send you 1 Bitcoin, then that transaction gets recorded permanently on the blockchain because it's the ledger, it's distributed ledger, and anybody can go and see that transaction. So therefore, it solves an issue which is called the double spend issue, which is basically that you can spend money more than once. And if you're able to do that, then it just devalues the worth of that money, whatever form of money we're talking about, right? Well, Bitcoin and the blockchain technology eliminated that problem because there's no way to double spend Bitcoin. If I send it to you, anybody can go in and see that it left my wallet and it's now in your wallet. And there's you can go to blockchain.info to see that transaction. So a couple foundational ideas to understand about cryptos and Bitcoin. All right, so if you think of the US paper dollars, of course we all know that the Federal Reserve can print however much they want. Okay, and every time they do so, every time they print another $1 trillion, it devalues all the money that you and I have. And how unfair is that? They can just totally debase all of our money without any say, right? And without anyone holding it back. But what's even worse, check this out. A lot of people don't realize this. And I've gotten into debates about this, but once people really see that this is a reality, it's kind of like a holy F kind of moment. All right, so most people know what the term Ponzi scheme is, right? And so the Ponzi scheme is essentially where you've got an organization or some sort of structure or pyramidal structure where people have to continue to put new money into that structure for it to continue to exist and for people to get paid out. Well, think about this. When the government needs money, when the government creates money, the government itself doesn't create the money. What it does is it goes to the Federal Reserve, which is just banks, right? And it's not federal, nor do they have any reserves, but they go to the Federal Reserve and they ask for, let's say, $1 trillion. Well, they're going to get that $1 trillion with interest attached to it. So therefore now, the United States now owes the Federal Reserve $1 trillion plus interest on top of that. Well, how are we going to pay off that interest? Well, we got to get more money from the Federal Reserve, which involves getting more interest. So it's this endless cycle of never, ever, ever getting out from underneath the debt. The debt system is that system of enslavement that keeps us, keeps us enslaved. And so with Bitcoin and with these crypto assets, that problem is eliminated. So Bitcoin, for example, and we often use the term Bitcoin, but there's a lot of different crypto assets and cryptocurrencies. But we'll just stick with Bitcoin because everybody knows the name and everyone's heard of it, and it's good to understand it. Bitcoin first before you start looking at the others. So the thing with Bitcoin is that there will never ever be more than 21 million Bitcoin in existence, and that is because Bitcoin itself exists as open source software, which says a lot right there. Open source, meaning that anybody can go see it. There's no company that's keeping the software private. You're not going to be able to look at Microsoft's code of their softwares, right? But Bitcoin's open source. It's available for anybody to see and for developers to work on. And so not only is it open source, but people can mine Bitcoin, and there's a certain rate of it being able to be mined. Right now, there's 16.5 or so million Bitcoin in circulation and in existence. And there will never be more than 21 million. That right there says a lot. That means that no government, no organization can just fabricate more Bitcoin out of thin air, right? Which means it's not going to get devalued. So therefore, as more and more people start to wake up to this whole reality of crypto economy, and they start to shift a little bit of their wealth and their money into the crypto economy, which basically is Bitcoin is the entry into that. Now you've got more people that are valuing Bitcoin and moving into Bitcoin, but there's not trillions and trillions of more Bitcoin being made all the time. It's not. It's about 17 million right now. So that means it becomes more and more rare each and every day as more and more people own it, which is part of how the value continues to increase. So right now, you can see that there's major moves happening all around the world with big investment banks, even nations are starting to accept and adopt and basically recognize. Japan, earlier this year, officially recognized Bitcoin as legal currency that is able to be used in Japan. There's over 250,000 businesses that accept Bitcoin straight up. And so people, when I have these talks with people, they often say, well, I can't pay my rent with Bitcoin. I can't pay groceries with Bitcoin. Well, actually, you can. First off, there's plenty of places that accept Bitcoin straight up. And you can just do a Bitcoin transaction. But also, you can easily use a debit card that you can transact out of your Bitcoin kind of wallet. You can use a mobile wallet. You can convert your Bitcoin into, whatever national currency, let's say US dollars, right there on your phone. And then boom, you use your debit card. There's even other cards that are coming out that allow you to spend directly out of your crypto accounts without having to convert them into national currencies. So the thing is, one thing to remember is that in 10, 15, 20 years, this will all be so normal. Right, we're going to look back, and the only talk of paper dollars is going to be in history books. Like our kids are going to think it's weird we use these paper dollars, right? So right now we're in that transition stage, and if you start to spend the time learning about this and understanding it, yes, it's a little bit of a reach technologically. I mean, I'm not a coder. I like technology. I like gadgets, but I'm not a coder or a programmer or a computer developer, dude. I just understand this kind of stuff because I've spent so much time learning about it, and I see what's happening here. So anybody can do that. And so, all right, a couple of the things to recognize is that one of the things that crypto and Bitcoin allows for is disintermediation. All right, big word. What does that mean? So if you think about it, what would it take for someone today? Like, okay, so let's say I've got family in Mexico, right? What would it take for me to send, say, $1,000, let's say $10,000 to a family member in Mexico? All right, I have to go to my bank, which is an intermediary, a third party. I would have to then pay wire transfer fees. I would be converting from US dollar to Mexican pesos. My family in Mexico would have to then convert it from whatever they're paying their fees. There's all these intermediaries, these third parties that take their cut. Well, with Bitcoin and crypto, none of that is necessary anymore. I can just literally just send from my wallet to my family's wallet in Mexico, and in a matter of minutes, not only do they have the same value, because Bitcoin is worth the same amount it's the same value in Mexico as it is here, because it's a global currency, and they can now have it in minutes. Rather than waiting like a week for a wire transfer. So we're basically eliminating the need for third-party intermediation, which is basically the banks, which is huge, you guys. I mean, this is nothing bigger than this. This is huge. So a couple of things to recognize is that you're going to see tons and tons and tons of what they call FUD, which is a term we all use, is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. You're going to see tons of FUD all over the news and all over the mainstream about how Bitcoin is not real and how it's a bubble and how all these kinds of terms. Well, think about that. Who owns the media? We all know who owns the media, right? It probably all trickles up to the central banks. So for those guys that are thinking, well, it came from them. It came from the NSA. It came from the CIA. Well, if that were the case, why would they be trying to, debunk it so much in the news? Pretty much my rule of thumb, whatever the news tells me to do, I do the opposite, right? Because that's what's probably in my best interest or our best interest. So it's definitely worth to kind of educate yourself on that. I'll kind of take a break and see if there's any kind of questions or comments you want to add to that.
My dude, I'm hypnotized by the knowledge because as much as I do is as little I know nothing. Just, you know what I'm saying? Like, these are broad steps to the future. Just like I submit myself to ayahuasca and send myself over there and hope that this isn't going to, I'm not dead, that you guys aren't going to scare me more to death or trap me in some insane reptilian. Like, I have to have faith in it a little bit and watching what's occurring. And even from the other side, they're like, dude, you guys have skin suits. You're inside the illusion. You have to break the illusion by, like, my brother tells me, I ain't got no time for this. I go, well, $1,000. Let's say you just bought one Bitcoin at $1,000, because people go, how do I cash it out and stuff? I go, if you would have bought it at $1,000, right? And then it's at what? It went up to 8-9 today. Almost $9,000, almost. Right? You could have put the 1,000 in, got the Bitcoin, and then pulled the 1,000 out for rent now, and would have had, $7,900. So, and there's Bitcoin ATMs
Oh, yeah.
So you can just take your Bitcoin, walk up to the ATM. Yes, there's a little fee. And it's not as much as, when they charge you $5. They don't do that. And you could just get cash. Secure yourself. Because we only got 4.5 minutes left. Because what we're going to do is try to bring out Sergio a whole bunch of times. And we're going to do the YouTube show. And we're going to just keep going. We're going to keep showing you what's happening. We're going to grow together as a tribe for the future.
Absolutely, man. There's one last point I want to make before we definitely run out of time. So I would be stoked to come on whenever you want to have me on and continue to kind of talk about how to kind of emerge into this crypto economy, because I keep using that term crypto economy because that really is the scope of what we're talking about here. So let me just kind of tailor that with what I was about to say. So a lot of people look at the current price of Bitcoin, $9,000, and they think, oh man, I missed the boat. And let me tell you, every single person that ever buys Bitcoins anytime in the past year or so has all said the same thing. Man, it's too late. It's too late. It's too late. No. If you think it's too late, then you really don't understand the gravity of what's happening here. Okay, so right now, nobody really knows, but estimates kind of say that about 1.5%, maybe 2% of the global population owns any amount of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. Okay, well, because this is a global currency and because this is an alternative to fiat and because this is obviously a new emerging technology, we're eventually going to get to 5%, 10%, 20, 30, 40, 50% global adoption. It's going to take 5, 10 plus years, but it's going to get faster and faster. So nobody has missed the boat. People that really dive into this look at Bitcoin eventually reaching 50,000, 500,000, $1 million in price. Looking at Bitcoin as basically, you can think of it as gold, digital gold. And so maybe Bitcoin won't be used in day-to-day transactions because a cup of coffee would cost 0.00005 Bitcoin to be impractical. But an alternative would be something called Litecoin, which is currently at about $80 in price. And that would be more practical for use for a cup of coffee. And therefore, Bitcoin would be used for storing large amounts of wealth and value. Homes are being bought. Millions of dollars worth of a home is being bought in Bitcoin. Yachts are being bought in Bitcoin. Bitcoin will probably be used to settle large national debts from country to country in the future. Whereas we use Litecoin, which we could be considered kind of like a silver to Bitcoin's gold in day-to-day transactions. So here's the thing. You're definitely not too late. No one's missed the boat. 2018 is going to be the massive breakout year for crypto, you guys. So it's worth the time to educate. Let me throw out a couple of YouTube channels that I would recommend to kind of following and learning this with. A really great resource and a great brilliant mind, understands money and Bitcoin and crypto, of course, to the T. He's written books and authors. He's an international speaker. He's got great YouTube talks on Bitcoin and crypto. His name is Andreas Antonopoulos. His YouTube channel is AANTONOP. Andreas Antonopoulos YouTube. A couple other great YouTube speakers. Cliff High is amazing. I owe so much to that guy because I've learned so much. Another great YouTube channel is Bix Weir. There's also Arcane Bear. There's Crypt O being the number. I love the Dollar Vigilante. I like Mike B, Crypto Blood, JSnip4. There's great people that are ushering us into the crypto economy. So look out for those guys. And I think in our next couple of talks, what we'll do is we'll go into some of the actual uses of some of these currencies and some of these crypto assets.
Absolutely.
So much more.
Sergio Garcia, we are FearLess.com. Thank you so much for coming out and spending the hour with us. And we're going to do this more and more. Stick around because Chris and Cherie are up next with Beyond the Veil. And later the Paranormal Portal and then Into the Microcosm with Jimmy Jean. So